fear too that like one conflict, one disagreement is going to blow everything up in this relationship. And I actually mostly mean friendships in that case. That like I worry if I upset someone one time, if I don't show up for the thing that they thought I was supposed to show up for, that's it. There's no way of repairing it.
Hello, and welcome to Working Your Way, the podcast dedicated to exploring the journey of authenticity in the workplace and discovering how to navigate it your way. I'm your host, Sandhya Sudhakar, and this episode is part of a series called Let's Talk About Labels, where we discuss the labels that we have a love-hate relationship with and break down what they really mean for each of us. Now, as always, we'll also share some ways that you can reflect on how they show up in your own life and career. And for this series, I'm inviting my friends to weigh in and share their experience using one of my very favorite ways to communicate, the voice note. I'm bringing on a co-host for this series as well. She's my friend and fellow entrepreneur, Arden Evenson. She's a content creator who advocates for financial inclusion. And when she's not talking about making money, she's talking about making babies, sharing all about her fertility journey online. In these episodes, we're really going to cover it all, from diving into the depths of human behavior to sharing our, hopefully, hilarious hot takes. So without further ado, let's get into the episode. Okay, welcome, Arden. This is going to be fun. We are going to talk about some labels.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, and we're just going to divulge all of our deepest, darkest stuff as we do it. I think that seems appropriate, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know me. I'm an open book. TMI does not exist. Transparent, fully open sharing. Let's get into it.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, so this week's episode is going to be about being a people pleaser. And so let's start with, what is a people pleaser? And I did a little research because this term is used so broadly. I think it's a really interesting one because I think a lot of people use it to describe so many different kinds of things. So I wanted to see, like, what does it really mean? And what I found was that it says a person who has an excessive desire to please others, often at the expense of their own needs and well-being. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I know her. Yeah, I feel like people pleasing is a label that I definitely identify with, but would love not to. It's like really hard for me to shake. Though I think that's something that I would maybe personally for me add to that definition. Something I've realized in therapy is that it's not just about putting other people's like comfort or needs above my own. It's a lot of times about avoiding discomfort for myself, and other people being unhappy or not liking me or being upset about something that I've done is deeply uncomfortable for me. And so if everyone is just happy with me and everything around them, my life is just a lot easier.
Yeah, okay. I'm glad that you said that because I'll save this for a little bit later, but I think my hot take about people pleasing is very similar in the sense of, like, it's not always about us giving up our own needs.
It's very self-serving in my
keeping
case.
ourselves comfortable. Exactly. This is exactly it. Okay, so what we're doing in these episodes is I have collected a bunch of voice notes from friends, and this is a way that I love to communicate by voice noting, right? And having deep life conversations asynchronously at moments throughout the day. I think
You're the voice note queen. I feel like
really.
Yeah. Well, I've more than anyone else in my life, and you've like encouraged me to use them more too. Than I think it is. It's a really good like way of communicating.
Yeah, you just get a little couple-minute snippet from your friend and you can give people a life update. It's so much easier than texting. And I do find it's really hard to catch people on the phone these days.
Yeah. Well, and I would even say related to people pleasing, I can hear people's tone and I know they're not mad at me.
So actually, what we're talking about is not people pleasing. We're talking about Arden pleasing.
You know, it's a special brand.
Okay, so before we get into this voice note, as I was looking this up, right? So it's about excessive desire to please others at the expense of your own needs or well-being. So some of the ways that this commonly shows up is by having a difficulty saying no to people, seeking approval or validation from others, which you and I could have a whole podcast series about, and suppressing your own needs. So let's listen to the first voice note from one of my friends.
Being a people pleaser to me is really about avoiding conflict. I don't enjoy conflict often, and so I will try to keep things neutral and keep them calm. Now, what it also means is it's a form of, for me, not being rejected, because I want to make people happy, so therefore they accept me and they won't reject me. How that shows up for me in my life is me basically being an accommodator to if someone makes a request from me. So I will try my best to deliver on that request because I feel like it will make them happy, and I like making them happy, and I think it reflects positively on me when I'm able to accomplish something that someone asks of me.
Wow. Okay. So she kind of captured a lot of what we just said, and this idea that, like, I think it's actually a misnomer now, because more of people pleasing is really about not feeling yucky things ourselves.
Yeah, and I really love the use of the word like accommodating or like being an accommodator, because I think it's not necessarily that I'm like don't care at all about my needs or completely prioritize other people over myself. But like, if someone asks me to do something that I'm not like, yes, that's exactly what I want to do, I do kind of do this like negotiation and like compromise internally of like, well, how can they get what they want? And I also cannot like feel really put out. And so, yeah, I agree that like, I think it is like, that avoiding kind of conflict, and that's the smoothing. And like I think for me is like, the child of an alcoholic who also had mental health issues, I do think that this is comes from childhood. And it's just it makes moving through life, I think, in a lot of ways a lot easier, which doesn't mean there aren't trade-offs, but it is this like smoother path often, is to just kind of accommodate the people around you as best as you can.
Yeah, I think the theme kind of that comes up for me is like keeping yourself like in good favor with people, and whether that's keeping the peace, doing things to make sure that people like you or they think well of you. And like I mean, coming from a trauma informed coaching background, I can certainly understand like being the child of an alcoholic or being the child of any kind of maybe emotionally um chaotic
Yeah.
parent. There's a lot of like keep the peace, keep things cool and calm or happy, and denying kind of the real things that are going on in order to keep people happy.
Yeah, and I think too about how like I am someone that doesn't feel like I actually have like I have strong opinions, but there are a lot of things I just don't care about. Like, I don't have a strong opinion about where we meet up with friends this weekend or what we do or I don't know, what tool we use to do this project. Or like, I don't care about a lot of things that I feel like other people have much stronger opinions about. And I'm like, well, if you care, we could just do that. And like, I don't really bother necessarily to go back and be like, is that real? Like, do I not have an opinion, or is this just sort of the automatic, like, well, they have an opinion. And so that's like, let's just do that. That's easy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it can be all of those things situationally, right? Like some of the times maybe you do actually care, but you didn't even give yourself a moment to figure out like what you wanted or what your opinion was and that. And actually the Enneagram type nine is coming up for me, because an Enneagram type nine is they're the diplomat. It's called the peacemaker, and they're kind of like they hear everyone's point of views and keep the peace and like to keep harmony in their relationships, but they also want to feel inner peace. And where this kind of crosses the line of like I feel inner peace into I just want to feel okay inside. I just want to avoid feeling kind of chaotic inside when there's conflict
Yeah.
around me, is like, okay, I'm going to go along with others in order to avoid me feeling yucky inside.
Yeah.
Because it is pulling on like real human things, right? The threat of disconnection from family members or society or whatever, right? These like instinctual things that
Yeah.
something like conflict avoidance is actually pulling on are very real.
Yeah. And I don't know, it makes me think too about like, I feel like where people pleasing most like disserves me is in like the stories I tell myself, the things that I'm worried about that aren't actually problems, like what my friends might be thinking as opposed to what they're actually telling me that they're thinking and feeling like, is my husband mad about this thing? Does he wish that we did another thing? Like, as opposed to just letting him tell me he wants to do another thing. And he's like also a people pleaser. So I feel like we have this funny thing where it's like, we have to stop, like we'll both be like getting ourselves so worked up about figuring out what the other person wants, and it's like we haven't stopped to actually talk about what the other person wants. We're just making a lot of assumptions, and like that's where it's like it's not helping me. It's not actually creating less icky feelings or conflict because I'm conjuring all this stuff in my brain in an attempt to avoid like justified yucky feelings later.
Yeah, it's like the trade, you're not thinking about the trade-off because you're avoiding one thing, but you're causing like 10 other problems over here.
Yeah.
Okay, so what you mentioned about projecting things onto others and stories that you kind of tell yourself, I think that's like the biggest thing. And I think maybe we should come back to this topic because the idea of me saying something to you, maybe some mild version of conflict avoidance would maybe like, Arden, I'm not going to come to your birthday party because you know what? I'm really tired. But like that's the perceived conflict. People pleasing would be like, I'm just going to go even though I feel awful. I'm going to
Yeah.
go because I don't want you to be mad at me.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know that you're going to be mad at me. You might actually be happy that not happy that I didn't show up. Obviously, you want me at your birthday party, but maybe someone else popped in last minute and it would be totally cool and it's not a big deal if I don't come and you'd rather spend quality time with me, not in a group. Like all these other things, right? We tell ourselves the scary stories,
Yeah.
but we don't tell ourselves the like, oh, what if this could be true also? We don't tell ourselves the possible positive stories.
Yeah, and I think I have this fear too that like one conflict, one disagreement is going to blow everything up in this relationship. And I actually mostly mean friendships in that case. That like I worry if I upset someone one time, if I don't show up for the thing that they thought I was supposed to show up for, that's it. There's no way of repairing it. When like in actuality, like the in this hypothetical birthday case, like what I'd probably think is like, wow, like Cynthia wouldn't cancel on me unless she really like needed to prioritize rest. Like I trust her. And like you're not doing this all the time. You're not this friend that's, not showing up for me. So like, man, I hope that she feels better, right? Like because I know she'd want to be there if she could.
Yeah,
But I don't
totally.
trust like that I don't know why. It's so unfair to my friends. I just like don't trust people to have the same like I don't know, gentleness. If I do something wrong, I just assume they're gonna be like, Arden is a jerk. She doesn't care about me. She's a bad friend.
Well, talk to your therapist about that.
I do.
We're one. No, honestly, that's so real though. And I catastrophize things in that way too. And I don't know, let's unpack that later. Let's listen to the second one and see what
Yeah.
they say.
Being a people pleaser means that I'm very averse to disappointing people, giving them bad news or even giving them modest bad news. And so it can show up, especially in work life, as not wanting to give partners, coworkers, vendor partners, bad news in any possible way. I particularly feel it when giving feedback to employees that could be doing better, coworkers who I respect and I believe are trying very hard, but still require some constructive criticism. And while I tend to be able to get there, it can be Painful.
Yeah. Okay. So
Oof.
this, like, I feel like carries into maybe a slightly new space the theme of, I don't want to tell you this. I don't want to give you this feedback. I don't want to give you the bad news because I'm predicting how you're going to respond to it. I'm predicting how you're going to feel if I tell you you could be doing something better. Or I'm predicting that or projecting onto you that you're going to be upset if part of a project is not going the way that we planned.
Yeah, feedback, I feel like, is a really interesting application of this. I hate getting feedback. Most constructive criticism for me makes me cry. Like, I just have like warned my managers in advance that, like, unless it's a really specific thing tied to like, can you write this a little differently, or can you like try this project in a little bit of a different way? If it's about like my communication style or my overall skill sets, I will cry. And so I make the assumption that everyone else is as sensitive to feedback as I am. And, instead of maybe figuring out how could I like shift the way that I'm giving that feedback in a way that feels actually constructive and like specific, I do just want to avoid it at all costs.
Okay, that's hilarious because when I get feedback, I think this is bad. I'm going to admit it. I think oftentimes my first reaction is, nope, you're wrong.
Oh my God. I've like really been trying to develop that in myself. Like, not as, at the very least, not assuming that it's right. Like, that,
Yeah.
not assuming that they're fully correct and that like they're all knowing, but at least allowing myself the room to question and be like, oh, I actually don't know if this is an accurate assessment of me. So I
I
love
think
that.
I think, yeah, I wish I could be like, I'm unapologetically like confident in myself. It's actually, I think, a very well developed defense
Yeah.
mechanism to get defensive, right? Or to assume that like to jump immediately to like, that's not right. Now, I will say I am somebody who really is very, very focused on like becoming a, I don't like this phrase, but like always wanting to be a better version of myself, always wanting to grow and learn and improve. And so I eventually, fairly quickly these days, go from you're wrong to there's some truth in that, or like, let me find out of this what I actually feel like is valuable. Clearly it also matters if it's coming from a source that I respect versus one that I don't, but to take it then and to say, okay, let me find how I can take some responsibility and improve and get better from this. But it's like that initial response is,
Yeah.
you're wrong. And so maybe I'm the reason people pleasers don't like to give feedback to people. People like me.
Well, and I picking up on something else, like, it so matters who this person is. Like, across all people pleasing, like, there are people, especially in work environments, that, after working with them for a while, I was like, oh, you're not worthy of me trying to please you. Like, you're unpleasable, or you're not reasonable, or you're toxic, or you just don't have a grasp on reality, and like you're like, it's all unrealistic what your expectations are. And if I am able to make that shift, then like, I don't care about making you happy at all. And I'm not even really going to be defensive in the feedback things. I'm just going to, in the back of my head, be like, okay, say whatever you want. Sure, that's how you feel. And my husband and I often talk about when I'm feeling these like high levels of anxiety related to people pleasing, how could I trick my brain into thinking it's one of these other people that at the very least I don't care so much about, so that I can stop. Like, I can kind of get out of this just like mulling over, like worrying about people so much.
Yeah, I think the idea that we're trying to, ultimately everything that we do in our behavior is like trying to keep ourselves safe in the world.
Yeah.
So whether that's like keep ourselves connected to our partner or our tribe, or our friend group or whatever, or even preserving resources like keeping our jobs,
Right.
where people pleasing comes in, it's like, is that person tied to your safety in the world in some way? And this is very, it's not quite literal these days, right, in a modern world, but to say yes to more things at work always like taking on more, or
Yeah.
like people pleasing when it comes to like taking on workload can be a little bit of a survival mechanism of like, I have to keep my job because I have
Yeah.
to keep my resources. And like, that's why I do it there in that arena. Or a close friend, right? It's harder to bring something up with someone when the stakes are higher in terms of like this person's role in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
Now, something else. So what this second person was talking about was interesting because I actually just worked with, probably about 6 months ago, a client who was, I think, the same Enneagram type. I'm not going to talk about that part, but like the idea that he found himself procrastinating on tasks because he didn't want to deliver bad news.
Mm.
So he would have, his list of to-dos, and that one thing would move to next week, and then it would move to next week, and then the deadline's getting closer and there's more pressure because he had to, as an example, like go tell this team that they weren't delivering on expectations, or, they weren't delivering on the briefs and the work that he had sent over. And so he was procrastinating, putting off doing that task because it was going to cause someone else to feel bad about themselves. Again, his projection that they would feel bad about themselves, not
Right.
that they would say, great, oh my God, we've been curious about this feedback for weeks and we really wanted to hear this. So that actually helps us go in this direction. No, he was thinking they're going to feel bad about themselves because they're not delivering what I'm asking them to. So I'm just going to avoid saying it.
Yeah, that's so interesting because I do think that as a like as a consultant, right? Like working with clients, like the last thing I want is to get late breaking feedback that we need to completely redo this project.
What is
Like,
it? Bad news doesn't get better with time?
oh my God. Like, I want you to tell me how you're feeling as early as possible. And I try and build in a lot of checks to make sure that we're like not moving in the wrong direction. Do I still want you to tell me this is looking great, but here are the things to fix? I really do. I really do. But I don't want people to like wait or procrastinate on that feedback because it's going to involve like more work and a bigger delay for everybody.
Yeah. So if the client were to give you a happy face sticker with the
Yeah.
constructive feedback, do you think that would help?
That'd be great. Oh no. I thrived as a child off of like the calendars where you put stars like when you did something right.
Right,
Like or like
right.
pulling the cards in like
Yeah.
kindergarten and like staying on green all day. Absolutely. Love those systems.
Yeah, you're a positive reinforcement millennial. That's
Mhm.
just
Words of
who you are.
affirmation. Love language.
Okay, let's listen to the next one.
To me, as a people pleaser, there's an underlying desire for everyone to like me and appreciate me. I believe it's connected with my own struggles around self-worth and self-esteem. It shows up in my life as putting everyone else's wants and needs first before my own, which causes a lot of emotions to surface when I'm in that place around feeling guilty, feeling resentful, feeling frustrated, and feeling like I abandoned myself in many ways. I also notice that as a people pleaser, when that part shows up in relationships with others, that I struggle with maintaining and keeping boundaries within my relationships, specifically around expressing no to others, with again without having that internal turmoil arise around guilt and frustration and resentment.
Yeah. Yes. Hard yes. Hard agreed, all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, picking up specifically on this like idea of boundaries, right? Like I feel like, boundaries are all the rage right now. And like we talk about how they're good for you and good for other people and having healthy boundaries is really important, but it feels wrong when you've like been a people pleaser for so long to like set and communicate boundaries about what you need or want in your own life, and how that influences and it impacts other people.
Yeah. Okay, so the fear of rejection is like my greatest mortal enemy. Um because in this, what this brought up for me is the idea of belonging, which is something that I relate to deeply. It's something that I talk about a lot, and it's something that for me personally, growing up being very different than the people that I went to school with in rural Indiana, um I think it really ingrained in me this idea of like I can shape shift and I can kind of be who I need to be in whatever room I'm in. I can get along with anybody. I can walk into any party and find some common ground and get people to like me. So one of the first things she says was like being a people pleaser in order to like be liked by others and to avoid rejection, right? And so this idea of disconnection comes up of like how we people please in order to stay connected to people, and that's being in good favor with them in a way, but it's like I can't say no to this person. I can't set a boundary with this person, because if I do, what happens next? And might I lose this person in my life, right? I mean, it's what
Yeah.
you talked about is like you think like one thing that you bring up might sever an entire friendship, right?
Right.
And so I think that kind of the need for belonging and the need to be connected to people is obviously, again, a very human, very real thing. And this is where I think this idea of like putting our own well-being, um people pleasing at the expense of our own well-being really comes in.
Yeah, and it's so like I don't it's just everything's so intertwined that like I think like I will talk about how I am a likable person. And I mean that in the context of just like I can be in a room and have a conversation with people. I don't really bring up a lot of tense, super, I don't really gonna be big opinions or like tense topics. Like I can make people feel seen and that I can make them feel connected to me. I can understand and listen. And it does in some ways, again, make my life easier. And but yeah, at like what are those trade-offs, right? Like what am I giving up in order to have the kind of advantages of being likable?
Yeah, and the trade-offs I think sometimes can be like I think a big part of my story is like kind of sacrificing my own connection with myself in favor of staying connected to others.
Yep.
And then like I've had to like rebuild my like connection to my own emotions, kind of my connection to my own needs. Like it's been like that muscle atrophied because I just didn't use it for such a long time. And now I'm like having to get back in touch with it and trying to figure it out. And how much time do I need to sit here and breathe before I actually know what I need? Like it takes a ridiculously long amount of time. And then I'm like, I could be doing things right now.
Yeah, and I think again, I think about friendship a lot. I talk to my therapist about friendship a lot, but I think about the time that I even just like I was having this thought recently. I've spent a lot of time thinking about like, whether the people that I'm close to, especially sort of locally to me now, are they supporting each other properly? Are they getting along? Do they like each other? Do they feel seen by each other? Should I brought these people together? Like what is everyone happy? And like I had this realization the other couple days ago. I was like, is it what I want? What does Arden want out of this community other than just harmony? And I don't know the
Yeah.
answer. Like, I don't know the answer because I often think I don't need that much. Like, my friends are like, you do so much, or like, what do you need? So there's a lot going on. I'm like, I don't know. It's probably medical related, and I'm just going to go to the doctor. Like, you're not a doctor. I don't need anything. I can process my feelings on my own. I have a partner I can process with. I'm good. I can get what I need. I'm very self sufficient. Don't worry about me.
Yeah. I was actually just in this kind of community gathering thing last night because I needed it. And We were all kind of sharing different things about it. And it's an Enneagram related group, which is really the only one that I'm involved in. I don't know why I needed to say that, but it's like I don't have like a big Enneagram community.
You're about more than the Enneagram.
Yes, thank you. That was part of it. And like I haven't really been involved in too many Enneagram communities because I don't know. I feel like the conversations I can't relate to a lot of the people. And in this one in particular, it was great. And I was saying something about connection with myself. And one of the other people in it was talking about her partner is an Enneagram type 3 and how hard it is to get him to say what he needs. And I was like, yeah, you gotta just like sit and stare at him in silence, and like maybe in like 4 minutes he'll figure it out. I don't know.
Yeah.
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 It's a hard one.
Yeah.
Okay, should we listen to the last one?
Yeah.
People pleasing is a hard one because I think it marries a couple of my other labels, which is perfectionism and overthinking. But I think people pleasing is someone who wants to make everybody around them happy, or wants to be liked by everybody, and appreciated. And I think that this does show up in my life, but more so in my personal life, particularly with close friends and family, that I want to make them happy. In recent years, it has shown up when, my husband and I are expecting our family to visit and stay with us, or friends coming, staying with us for a while. And it sends me into a tizzy of anxiety and anticipation, trying to think through all possible contingencies, coming up with fun plans, thinking through all the needs and doing all the grocery shopping. And so it becomes this big project instead of, family visiting just being a joyful occasion.
Yeah. I can relate to a tizzy.
I can relate to it, Tizzy. And yeah, I feel like it is, going back home. And I'd say in my case, usually it's going back home and being with my family. Like, yeah, it really throws you back into some old patterns. And like, I am like more heightened as a people pleaser of making sure everyone in my family is happy because that's where this habit, this skill, this label was trained, right? And it's where it was most useful. And I'd say I probably first noticed that, I don't know, 5 or so years ago. And now I'm really trying to be like, oh, I'm not responsible for everyone's happiness here. And like, again, keep in mind, in most of these cases, I'm the youngest or second to youngest person there. And like everyone's in older generations than me. So it's not even like these are young people, but I just have this like feeling that like I am responsible for everyone and if everyone's happy. And if like the restaurant has a longer wait or if it's loud, or if the hotel's not as nice and isn't like the pictures, then like that's my fault and they're mad at me because of that, even though they're not communicating that in any way.
And they wouldn't be mad at you probably.
No.
But again, that's the projection, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. If we went to a hotel and the bathroom didn't look like the pictures, I would be mad at you. So I just wanted to let you know that.
Good to know. Good to know. I'll ask for confirmation of bathroom photos. Thank you for communicating that need to me.
Anyone who's ever traveled with me knows that like I pick where we stay because I am like, maybe I'm just the prissiest, but also like I have a talent for picking
I'm so good at it.
Airbnbs and hotels. Yeah.
I'm so good at finding accommodation. That and ordering for everyone at the table. So good at it.
Okay, so this is interesting because I think, and this relates back to this voice note, is like, I think that when you have like a natural kind of social intelligence, it's a sticky subject, or it's like a slippery slope, I guess I would say, because on one hand, I think there are people who have a unique kind of intelligence that allows them to think about like how people are going to experience things and like really play out, okay, well, this person's going to need time to do this. And so we'll make sure we don't plan an activity right then. And this person likes this kind of food. And so like out of all these choices of restaurants, these would be the best ones. And if I'm going to order for the table, I'm going to get something vegetable and I'm going to get something meat and I'm going to get something fried and I'm going to get something fresh. And like, I'm going to design the experience in a way that
So
meets the
curated.
needs of the people. Right, exactly. And like you have it, and I think that our voice noter also has it, that there's a skill and a talent in creating an experience for everybody, making the most of their time visiting when your family comes
Yes.
into town, and having them see things. And I think there's also some pleasure that comes along with that.
Yeah. They mentioned the voice note, this idea of like being appreciated. And I think that's a really
Yeah.
important other side of that coin, that like, I think if I felt like this people pleasing was moving too much into being like controlling, then that wouldn't be like a piece of it. But the point is to please people. It's for them to be happy, and for you to like add value to your life. And like, it's so reinforcing when then that is appreciated, that like we go out to eat and people are like, you're ordering for us, I'll just close my menu, right? Like it's
Yeah.
like a trusted and appreciated thing. And I think that's a really interesting and like important key of this like the people pleasing brain.
Yeah. Well, and I think so there's a couple of things that I think we can kind of unpack here, because like the idea of using a talent to like create an experience for somebody to plan out an itinerary for a friend to visit, like I think it's a caring and generous and like lovely thing to do. And we have to think about how much are we sacrificing our own needs, our own well-being? Are we like staying up? Are we like stressing out about it? Are we, how are we caring for ourselves as we care for the other people through making these plans or that kind of thing?
Yeah.
And there's also this element of like, okay, I can use my social intelligence to like understand what people might need or expect or whatever. And then there's a fine line between using that and projecting what I think they're going to think, right? And especially when it comes to the negative stuff.
Yeah. And it's like, I even had the idea, I'm like, it's like, okay, we can create this experience. We can be really thoughtful and really intentional. And then it's best for my mental health, at least, as after doing that, if I like can let go a little bit of the outcome, because even if it doesn't work out, it doesn't take away from maybe the fact that I was really sort of thoughtful about this thing to begin with and really intentional, even if the bathroom was really bad because those photos lied to me, Satya.
It's not your fault. It's not your fault. I would not cut off our friendship, but I would talk to you about it. This is funny,
And I
'cause
would
it brings
cry.
up I'll make a compliment sandwich.
Thank you.
Arden, you're amazing. This picture wasn't great, but I really love your glasses.
Thank you so much.
But this is funny because it makes me think of my mom, who, when we go out to a restaurant or something, I'll like give suggestions, right? This is what I do. I'm the planner.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, what about here? They have this reservation. We can, this works logistically with whatever else we're doing. And my mom will say things like, well, your brother doesn't like whatever. Your brother doesn't eat seafood. And I'm like, okay, it's a restaurant. They have other things other than seafood, even if it's a seafood restaurant.
It's true.
Also, he's not 14 anymore. Like, he does eat seafood now. But like, she's projecting onto him like what she knows his preferences are. And yet I've been to like tasting menus with him where he doesn't have a choice but to eat the things, and he loves it and he enjoys it or whatever,
Yeah.
And so it's just funny because I'm like, you're bending all of our plans in order to like appease this one condition that may or may not be true, right? And I think that's really where we get into, are you sacrificing yourself or your needs or your well-being for something that isn't even what the person needs?
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's very funny. As you were talking, I was like, okay, I'm planning this group dinner on Saturday, and I found this place that I think we should go, but it's not super easy to get to. And so I'm going to give these other options, but also maybe we've been to those before. Maybe they want to try something new. And I'm just like, just ask them. just ask.
It's going to be okay.
You could just ask instead of trying to find the perfect answer. You could just ask what people care about.
Yeah. Would you rather be logistically convenient or go to someplace new? Like,
Right.
and people will have an opinion, you know,
Yeah.
and then you don't have to guess or try to like bend your mind into a little origami
Right.
perfect answer.
Find something that doesn't exist. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think this kind of brings us back to the conflict topic because oftentimes we are avoiding conflict. We're avoiding bringing something up in order to avoid conflict, or pretending we're okay with something that we're not in order to avoid conflict.
Yep.
And when it is someone that we care about, it isn't the best thing for them or the relationship to be in the dark. And so we think we're avoiding bringing something up to appease people, but they might actually really want to know that thing. In fact, they probably do want to know that thing that is bothering us or hurting us or stressing us out.
That sounds accurate.
I think that's the thing is we like overcorrect a lot. We overcorrect a lot, especially when it's people that we care about. And I will tell you, like, I've had a couple of instances, and mostly in professional situations where I like either set a boundary, I said no to something. In one of them, I mean, I'll admit it was very uncomfortable. I said no to someone's request because they were asking for some things that I had created that I it's my intellectual property. I felt
Right.
like I'm not just gonna give this to you to use. Like I spent a lot of time and energy and expertise and money and everything to like create this thing. So I said no, and she actually did not respond well. I can't remember if I talked to you about this or someone else. I might have talked about it. We have a boundaries episode coming up. She kind of like pulled the like feminism card on me and said, "Well, I like to support women, so I would have shared it with you, or I would share my stuff with you." And I was like, "Ma'am."
That's not how you get the thing.
Yeah.
I have a friend recently who gets, she went to business school. There's a ton of like, alumni, student, new grad connections and stuff. She gets asked all the time for coffee chats, but like, girl also needs to do her job and like advance in her own career and maintain personal
Yeah.
time. And so, sometimes she's like, I'm sorry, I can't do this right now. Can you follow up in a couple of months? And she said that to someone and they responded unhappily and then separately talked to other friends about can you believe that she wouldn't have coffee with me? And luckily that like mutual friend was like, it sounds like she's just protecting her time and that's a reasonable thing to do. And so I don't know if some of this people pleasing too just comes from just like, I don't know, misaligned expectations and like what we have. And I think even specifically with maybe women, like what we expect people to give to us. And I think it kind of reminds me, I think it's probably been for longer than this, but I feel like I've really been noticing this rhetoric over the last maybe 5 years of like being a good friend is like showing up, right? Like someone isn't feeling well, you just show up with the thing that you think that they need, or like someone just had a baby and they said they don't need help, you show up anyway. I can't just show up and guess when people need me to show up with what they need to. I can't. I don't have the time for that, or I'll never be doing anything that I need to be doing because I think that I'm supposed to show up.
Yeah.
And like and appear in the perfect way. And I have no idea how that is. And so it's like some of my friends and I have had this conversation of like, I will show up, but you've got to help me understand when you need me to do that and like give me some guidance. Otherwise, I'm constantly worrying that I'm not showing up for you when you need me to, because the rhetoric is that that's what we're supposed to be doing, just constantly showing up from people. But if I am close with more than 2 people, that's not possible.
Yeah, it's so true. I think so much life would be so much easier if we just said what we needed, if we knew what we needed, and then we said what we needed,
Yeah.
and we don't expect people to read our minds or like, well, I would have done this for them, and so the fact they didn't do it for me is like, ugh, I can't believe them, And
Yeah.
it's like people are different, and that's okay, and you got to be
Yeah.
okay with that. Now, I think in the instance of me saying no to this woman, it was very uncomfortable. I felt awful afterwards.
Yeah.
But I also am like, okay, this is what setting boundaries looks like sometimes. I set a boundary. She doesn't respond well. And yes, I did threaten that connection. I mean, I said, I don't talk to her anymore.
Right.
And so that didn't feel good. But when I think about it, it's like what the trade-off would have been is for me to then have given her the stuff and feel bad about it. Like I betrayed myself.
Yeah.
And that is so much worse. And it's like the thing that we don't really think about when it's like, okay, I have to set a boundary. This might put this relationship at risk. When it's someone that really matters, like I think more times than not, you work through it and or you're pleased with how they respond. But sometimes it doesn't go the way you want it to. And you have to remember that like your connection with yourself just got strengthened, your own self-trust, and you having your own back. And that is so much more meaningful than like whoever this person is.
Yeah. I think about like how have I not allowed the relationships that are important to me to like not be strengthened because of the things that I'm afraid of that I like I talk to my therapist a lot about how I don't feel like I have a lot of experience with like rupture and repair in like long-term relationships. There aren't ruptures. And so I don't have experience repairing them. I avoid them. I don't let the rupture happen. But you know, as I've been a little bit more comfortable with that, or as it's happened for other reasons, I noticed that when those moments do happen, when we do have a conflict or a disagreement, and then we sit down and have a real conversation about it and talk about what that means, like it makes that relationship stronger. And so I think that's something I've been trying to think about in my own sort of relationship with conflict, is that like it's not just a bad thing, that it can actually strengthen and like grow our relationships in a really important way.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so true. The idea of healthy conflict is like conflict isn't bad inherently.
Sounds bad.
I still don't like it, but no, it's not bad inherently, right? And I think what you just said is like the rupture and repair. It's like you strengthen bonds by testing them or stretching them, or you know, whatever it is a terrible analogy. So I'm going to lose the analogy and just say, I think when we can voice things to people, they then know us better. It just builds a better relationship in the future. And when it's meaningful, it's like, and they want to know. They don't want us to silently suffer, but
Yeah.
for whatever reason, we do it to ourselves sometimes.
Yeah.
So I think as we wrap up, I'm curious if all of this conversation for you brought up any like resources or what would help in this kind of situation to overcome this people pleasing. Maybe what's helped you, what, you know, maybe it's books, maybe it's therapy, maybe it's, you know, all of the things. But what can help people overcome people pleasing or start to balance it out with self-pleasing? That sounds bad. Okay. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, I mean, you know, +1 for therapy. But I think for me, it helps to, in the moments where I can feel myself obviously people pleasing, and that doesn't mean I catch it all the time. It's like really like trying to think of what avoidance of whatever the conflict or discomfort is, what's on the other side of that? Like, what are those trade-offs? And so like, I think as like a work example, because I've been staring so many personal ones, still friend related. A friend and I are potentially partnering on some work together. We're going to do a proposal, and then, you know, if we were to win it, we were to work together. And I had to send her a Marco Polo today because that's my preferred over voice memos, face and voice for tone. And I was like, listen, I'm super excited about this project. I think that our skills would work together really well. I need to name that I am so stressed out about disappointing you and that this working relationship might not go well. And so next week, when we're talking about work process going forward, I want to just like start talking about what that looks like. And like, I don't want to not do this project that I'm excited about and that I think her skill set is great for and complementary to me because I'm so afraid and stressed out of doing that. Right. And so like starting to just like acknowledge that. And I think again, like in with people that you're close to, like my friends all know that I struggle with this. And like I'll have moments where I'm like, I need to be a bad friend, or I've had my bad friend era to practice like not saying yes to everything and just kind of being a little bit selfish. And I just communicate that with people because it's a shift and it's different. It might mean that I show up differently or behave differently, but just kind of communicating with the people you're closest to. It doesn't have to be everyone to start, and just like practicing every once in a while what it is to like put yourself first.
I love that. I think a couple of things came to mind for me. One is, and I reference this book probably every 3 episodes on this podcast, and it's called Emotional Agility. And it's just really like, how can we build the muscle to like allow emotions to happen in our body? Like the physiological chemical process of like experiencing an emotion is usually about 90 seconds, which is kind of crazy because
Wow.
I think it's a lot shorter than we might think it would be.
Yeah.
And if you sit with your feelings for 90 seconds, it might feel like forever, but it gets easier. And it's just this idea of like getting in touch with like, okay, this is how I feel. Like feelings aren't facts. Like I can experience an emotion and I can then like go forward from there. I can make a choice based on that data that the emotion is telling me. I'm experiencing anger. Okay, that probably means like I feel like violated or disrespected in some way. What do I want to go do with that? But we don't really give ourselves the time and the space to even just like name it. And so being able to do that allows you to like have some agency and make a choice in what you want to do next. If I were to say, oh my God, I can't be angry. Like I'm a good person and good people don't get angry, or I'm going to now like take this emotion and I'm going to like make up a whole other story about how this person was doing this on purpose. And, so it's like, we have to like find the middle ground of like not squashing it down or ignoring it or pretending it's not there, and not taking it, and before we actually give ourselves a little bit of time and space to like make a conscious decision, like reacting to it. And so I think that middle ground is important, and that's why I love this book.
Yeah, I just jump to make the feeling go away.
Exactly.
And usually that's just do what the person wants. Say yes. Like don't talk about the thing that's bothering. Just make the feeling go away.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's like, ooh, I feel icky right now. Like, let me just say yes, because I don't want to feel icky inside. But if we actually just let ourselves feel icky, I mean, like, name it and sit with it for a second, then we can be like, okay, what do I actually really want to do in this situation? So that's one. And then the other is, I think, this idea of like how we project stories in like, if I say no to your birthday party, you're going to hate me forever and we're not going to be friends anymore. And then we're both just going to be sad for the rest of our lives. Like,
sounds right.
What if, exactly, that's exactly what happens.
It's the only possible outcome.
What if I actually imagined a couple of other outcomes?
Mm-hmm.
What if I actually said that's one way that this could play out? What if I actually imagine a positive outcome of this decision that I want to make, or this thing that I want to communicate to you that I don't know how you're going to respond to? Maybe you're going to be excited that someone else that is visiting from out of town can now come to your party, or you're going to respect that I am going through a lot of stuff and I can't make it, just like what we talked about, right?
Yeah.
So I think if we can sit and like, when we catastrophize the possible outcome of a conflict, or saying no to someone, or like not pleasing them, can we maybe map out like 1 or 2 other stories that aren't the worst case scenario?
Yeah. Well, and even my therapist will be like, okay, so you're worried about this person being disappointed about this thing. What happens if they're disappointed? And I go, well, they probably tell me they're disappointed. I apologize. They feel fine. And then I feel awful about it for days. Like that's the actual worst case scenario is that it's not a ruptured friendship and we never talk again. It's that I feel icky later instead of now. I don't know. Like, right. It's like, even if I'm like, man, I am sad that like Santi can't be at this party. And then like, I can just tell you that, like, next time, hey, I was really bummed that you couldn't be there. Like, can we find it like a time to like make it up or something and like celebrate in
Yeah.
another way? Or like next time, can you like just flag like a day earlier so I can like make some adjustments or something? You know, like we can just talk about it. But instead of just like the bad thing is then like falling off a cliff toward death, like it could just be kind of bad and then probably fine.
Yeah. And you know what? I bet if you tell that person you're disappointed and you feel bad about it for days, the more you do that,
Mm-hmm.
the fewer days you're going to feel bad about
I think
it.
that's totally right.
That's going to become 2 days, and then it's become 1 day, and then it's become
Yep.
half a day, then it'll become an hour, and then you'll be like, okay, I feel bad about that, and we're moving on now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I think those are some good suggestions. Also, as I mentioned, I do have a boundaries episode coming up. I think it's going to be a couple of weeks after this airs. So we will go back and link that in the show notes when that's out.
Nice.
Well, until next time, when we talk about a new label.
See y'all later.